بروکسل-کنفرانس در پارلمان اروپا. ایران، چشمانداز تغییر و سیاست اتحادیه اروپا با حضور دهها نماینده و حمایت از شورای ملی مقاومت و طرح 10 ماده‌ای خانم رجوی برای آینده ایران. 3 خرداد 1402.
قسمت آخر. سخنرانی‌های نمایندگان پارلمان اروپا. میلان زور، رئیس مشترک گروه دوستان ایران آزاد در پارلمان اروپا، وزیر آموزش و ورزش اسلوونی 2008، نایب رئیس هیئت رابطه با کشورهای آسیای جنوبی. پاتریسیا تویا، وزیر امور برابری ایتالیا 2000، وزیر روابط پارلمانی 2001، معاون کمیسیون صنعت، تحقیقات و انرژی. فرانسیس فیتزجرالد، نایب رئیس گروه مردم اروپا، عضو کمیسیون حقوق زنان و برابری، وزیر تجارت ایرلند 2017، وزیر دادگستری و برابری 2014-2017. هرمان ترتش، نایب رئیس گروه محافظه‌کاران و رفرمیست ها. سوزانا چیکاردی، عضو کمیسیون خارجی و کمیسیون حقوق بشر پارلمان اروپا. دوریان روکماکر، نماینده پارلمان اروپا از هلند. دکتر آلخو ویدال کوادراس، رئیس کمیته بین‌المللی در جستجوی عدالت نایب رئیس پیشین پارلمان اروپا 1999 تا 2014.
میلان زور. تاریخچه التزام جنبش شما به اصول دمکراتیک به ما نشان داده که این جنبش نیروی واقعی مبارز برای ایرانی آزاد و دمکراتیک است. در تمام این سالها شما در کانون کارزارها و حملات رژیم بوده اید. آنها حتی یک دیپلمات را فرستادند تا در تجمع بزرگ شما در پاریس بمبگذاری کند.
Thank you, dear Chair, dear colleagues, dear friends. I'm very happy and honored that we have with us the leader of the Iranian democratic opposition, Mrs. Mariam Rejui, who I've met many times in the European Parliament. Your movement has been fighting for democracy in Iran over the 40 years. Unlike other movements, you remained true to your values, even when it has been difficult. We are grateful to you and your team in the European Parliament for your dedication. Your movement's history of commitment to democratic principles has demonstrated to us that you are a genuine force fighting for free and democratic Iran. You want nothing more than freedom for the people of your country. This and the fact that you are the only one who is fighting for secular democracy in Iran is why the democratic world and myself are united in our support and solidarity with your movement for a free, democratic and secular republic in Iran. At this point, let me mention that the last common letter of over the 100 ex-president of the countries or governments sent to President of the United States and Prime Minister of Great Britain at the European institution as well is extremely important because it's very clearly points who is who in Iran and who is real opposition in Iran. This letter is extremely important. And in all these years, you've been at the focus of the regime's campaign. You have been under all sorts of physical and psychological attacks. They even sent a diplomat to try to bomb your big gathering in Paris. No other movement has received this amount of pressure. The experience of the last 9 months since the beginning of this uprising also speak for itself. The Iranian people have shown that they are not afraid to stand up for their rights, and they will not give up until they achieve a free and democratic Iran. Mrs. Rejui, the Iranian people will not give up and they will not be defeated. The regime's days are numbered and a free and democratic Iran is inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you.
پاتریسیا تویا، وزیر پیشین امور برابری و وزیر روابط پارلمانی ایتالیا. در کشورم ایتالیا حمایت قابل توجهی از خانم رجوی و تلاش‌های او برای ایران وجود دارد. همه صرف نظر از مواضع سیاسیشان از یک ایران آزاد و دموکراتیک حمایت می‌کنند. اعدام‌های شوکه کننده اخیر نشان می‌دهد رژیم ایران در سراشیب سقوط چه میزان به استیصال رسیده است.
Je suis ravie de voir Madame Rajani au Parlement européen. Elle a toujours été bien accueillie ici et je vois lui donner un grand welcome. C'est important de souligner une fois de plus que nombreux parlementaires des différents groupes politiques soutiennent vos efforts et votre engagement en faveur d'un futur Iran libre. Je salue particulièrement votre détermination dans votre lutte dans l'intégralisme islamique. Je sais que même dans mon pays d'origine, l'Italie, et cela me réjouit, il y a un soutien à Mme Rajui et ses efforts pour l'Iran. Je crois que tout le monde, quelles que soient ses positions politiques ou les appartenances à différents groupes, soutiennent un Iran libre et un Iran finalement démocratique. Nous connaissons tous les chiffres d'exécution dans le pays qui sont malheureusement terriblement augmentés depuis le début des manifestations. Et aussi, je suis vraiment choquée totalement choquée d'entendre que plus que 100 personnes ont été exécutées dans les dernières semaines. Cela montre à quel point le régime est désespéré, je pense, dans sa chute. Nous attendons avec impatience le jour où ce soulèvement actuel, si louablement alimenté par des femmes, des courageuses femmes, je voudrais dire des héroïnes inconnues, et cet soulèvement conduira à un changement de régime et nous aurons une république démocratique et laïque, comme beaucoup de voix ont déjà dit et vous avez admirablement dit. La résistance iranienne a payé un lourd prix à l'intérieur de l'Iran. Depuis longtemps, je connais votre différentes situations qui se sont succédées parmi ces années. Des milliers de personnes ont été exécutées, dont de nombreuses femmes, une fois encore. Ce sont des crimes contre l'humanité, il n'y a pas de doute. Ils sont des crimes que toute la communauté internationale condamne sévèrement et doit continuer à condamner sans cesse et sans hésitation. Le peuple iranien mérite bien mieux. Notre Parlement, comme monsieur le collègue a dit, s'est déjà exprimé avec force contre les actions du régime et continuera à le faire. Pour cela, vous pouvez compter sur mon engagement et sur mon soutien constant. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
فرانسیس فیتزجرالد. مردم ایران به وضوح خواستار آزادی و احترام و دموکراسی هستند. در پارلمان اروپا ما باید از همه اینها به بهترین شکل ممکن حمایت کنیم.
Thank you for the invitation to be here with you and for the opportunity to say a few words. Mrs. Rajvi and colleagues, it has all been said, I think, but actually I'm here in solidarity with you to express, my support, because you have suffered not just in the last year or 2 years, but for decades. And we have seen appalling abuses of human rights, which continue to this day. And a former speaker from the Netherlands said that the regime is the enemy of the civilized world. And I think that is true. What we are seeing is absolutely appalling abuses day in, day out, death penalty, protesters being arrested, no rationale whatsoever. And just to say that the people of Iran clearly are demanding freedom and respect and democracy. And certainly here in the European Parliament, we should be supporting all of that in the best way possible, because I conclude by saying that the sacrifice of so many cannot be in vain. Thank you.
ترچ. خانم رجوی، ما به الگویی چون شما برای مبارزه با شر نیاز داریم. اگر این رژیم تروریستی که در تهران هست این همه هم دست نداشت، از مدت‌ها قبل در ایران حکومت دیگری می داشتیم.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mrs. Rajavi. Thank you very much for being here, for your presence. Thank you for your courage, for your firmness, and for your example in fighting evil. We need your example of fighting evil in this place where you are now. We need it very dearly. You know, I think we would have another regime since long time in Iran if we wouldn't have had so much of accomplices with this terror regime we have in Tehran. And that is Borrell's confusion, which has been a Borrell's confusion with Iran all over the time, as we know, and we have lost many, many years with this appeasement that came out of this place here. So I thank you very much for the firmness. As I say, I think it's an example. We have Iran as a threat to all what is dear to us. This regime is an enemy of all of us, of all the civilized world. So we have to ask our representatives to reflect this danger and to reflect the firmness we need against this lethal enemy. So thank you for your firmness and thank you for your example against me.
سوزانا چیکاردی. مجازات اعدام توسط جمهوری اسلامی نه برای مبارزه با جرم و جنایت، بلکه برای ترساندن مردم و برای به تسلیم کشاندن آنهاست.
Thank you, Mrs. Rajavi, for being here, because your strength, your courage is a model for the whole world. And I would like to start to remember three men: Majid Kazemi, Saled Mirashami, and Saed Yacoubi. The picture here, these are the names of the three men hanged in the Isfahan prison last week. These are the three men accused to be enemies of God. The example of Majid, Saled, and Saed is a lesson for all of us in the free world. We should launch an international inquiry to discover who is attacking girls in schools with toxic gas. If the government itself is responsible, which is a high probability, we have to introduce new sanctions for this violation of human rights, including the right to study. But the real meaning of this massacre is political intimidation. Death penalty used by the Islamic Republic not to fight crime, but to terrorize people into submission. We need to ask ourselves, regarding the desirable international inquiry into the gas poisoning, how is the EU currently moving, and what more can we do to establish a commission of inspectors in accordance with the international law? On the escalation of executions, how can we mobilize our public opinion against it? And what more can we do to sanction it? Freedom for Iran, freedom for the Iranian people.
دوریان رکماکر. مردم ایران خواستار آزادی هستند و پارلمان اروپا در کنار آنها ایستاده است.
Thank you, Mrs. Rajavi, for being here with us. I can say that we are greatly honored because you're so brave and so persistent and you have so much patience. So I think I can speak for all people from the Netherlands, where I'm a representative for, that we admire you greatly. The people of Iran demand freedom, and the European Parliament stands beside them. Decades of struggle are culminating in an uprising that will end the reign of terror in Iran. The courageous struggle of the people in Iran and outside Iran that began in September 2022 cost the lives of more than 800 people. 30,000 people were arrested, and this month more than 100 people were executed. The role of women in the uprising is significant, and it tells us that the opposition is widely supported. The slogan, "With or without hijab," is a sign of unity. of the Iranian people who are determined to shed the terror of their oppressors. We all reject all kinds of dictatorship in Europe. Europe must never in any way or form try to establish a normal relationship with a regime that committed so many crimes. Over 120,000 opposition members are executed by the regime in Iran, and we must never forget the sacrifices the opposition made. In an open letter to the world leaders of the United States, the EU, Canada, and the UK, the government leaders and former leaders in Europe urged them to stand with the Iranian people in their request for change and to take decisive steps against the current regime. I'm so honored that I'm giving the chance to express my support for the democratic Iran opposition. We know the people of Iran want a democratic, non-nuclear republic, and I'm confident that the regime in Iran will change. In an interconnected world, people should be able to live and work together in peace. If we can help the Iranians to establish a democratic Iran, we have to, because it will be a tremendous contribution to world peace as a whole. So I thank you again, Mrs., and I hope we can help you establish your objective. Thank you.
دکتر آلخو ویدال کوادراس، رئیس کمیته بین المللی در جستجوی عدالت. بیش از 100 تن رهبران جهان در نامه خود میگویند برای 4 دهه ائتلاف دمکراتیک شورای ملی مقاومت ایران پیوسته و خستگی ناپذیر تغییر دمکراتیک را دنبال کرده است. آنها از طرح 10 ماده‌ای خانم رجوی حمایت می‌کنند. زمان تغییر سیاست اتحادیه اروپا در قبال ایران، یعنی زمان تغییر سیاست از مماشات به قاطعیت فرا رسیده است. آنها باید به نامه 100 نخست وزیر و رئیس دولت سابق گوش فرا دهند.
Thank you very much, Javier. Well, the first thing I must do is to express my satisfaction for being blacklisted by the regime. Together with my good friends Javier Zarzalejos, John Saradil, Milan Esver, Herman Tersch and others, we have been blacklisted. I've put this blacklisting in my CV as a very special merit, as you can understand. These sanctions prove 2 things. One, we knew the regime is a criminal regime. The second is not a surprise. They are completely stupid. Well, when it comes to speak about the European policy in relation to Iran, we must realize that now we are in a very special and crucial juncture. This letter that 100 of former prime ministers and former heads of state have sent to the President of the United States, to the President of the Council in Europe, and also to the prime ministers of United Kingdom and Canada. And this letter is something that we must examine carefully in all its importance. Because if we read the letter, it says, we believe it is time to hold the leadership of the Islamic Republic of Iran to account for its crimes. It also says, we believe it is for the Iranian people to decide their future. And the letter recognizes that for 4 decades, the Democratic Coalition National Council of Resistance of Iran has constantly and tirelessly pursued democratic change, and also the letter supports the 10-point plan of Mrs. Rajvi. And finally, in the letter, these 100 former prime ministers and former head of state, I mean, this is really something. They urge your nations, they say, to stand with the Iranian people in the quest for change and to take decisive steps against the current regime. I mean, they cannot be clearer, they cannot be stronger in their statement. So I think it is time that the European Union changes its policy in relation to the Iranian dictatorship. We have wasted decades with the illusion that there is a moderate fraction in the regime. This is nonsense, because they are all the same. They all share the same malignant nature. And also, we have believed that negotiation, that appeasement, that dialogue would give us some result. And not only it has come to nothing, but it has been counterproductive. So it is time for a change of the policy of the European Union in relation to Iran, a change from appeasement to firmness. They must listen to this letter of the 100 former prime ministers and head of states and contribute decisively to something that is of extreme importance, not only for Iran, for the Middle East, but for the whole world, a free and democratic Iran. We will be with you, Mrs. Rajvi, until this goal is achieved. Thank you.
I said at the beginning that this is the house of democracy, and democracies don't apply double standards. So we can't accept for others what we would find unacceptable for us at home. And I think it's very simple. What we want, what we support, is a government in Iran based on the consent of their citizens, not on the repression of them. And we will support that, because that it is in our responsibility, but also in our belief and our moral and political commitment to do so. So, Mrs. Rajavi, there are different kinds of languages. There is a language of power, there is a language of compromise, there is a language of diplomacy, but there is a language of liberty, of freedom. And you really speak that language. And I'm sure that it's the future of Iran, because you are in the right side of history, and what is more important, on the right side of the future. Thank you.
Permettez-moi de conclure en vous remerciant pour cette conférence importante au Parlement européen. Le peuple iranien est déterminé à renverser ce régime. Le régime veut faire obstacle à la solidarité de l'Europe avec le peuple iranien et sa résistance organisée. C'est pourquoi il faut adopter une politique de fermeté par l'inscription des pastorants sur la liste de terrorisme. L'Europe doit reconnaître le droit du peuple iranien et surtout la jeunesse à se défendre et soutenir la campagne pour arrêter les exécutions en Iran. Le Conseil national de la résistance iranienne est une alternative indépendante qui lutte depuis 44 ans contre le régime des mollahs. Je suis sûre qu'avec votre solidarité et avec détermination de notre peuple et de sa résistance organisée, l'Iran sera libre. Je vous remercie.
Well, now, Mrs. Rajavi, you have to declare this session ended.
For you?
You have to hit that?
Comme ça?
Okay.
Thank you.